Hi, good morning, YouTube. I made a last video. Oh man, yeah, up in the morning, pain meds kicked in already. Feeling good, kind of. Anyway, my last video, I was comparing Matt, Thou Art That, and Corey, Professor Anton's, you know, relationship. I misrepresented, but not trying to falsify Matt, and more in a apophantic sort of a glimpse at what he was saying, and then trying to summarize it. But I'm not trying to misrepresent him. But sometimes I feel like they're, and I don't know to what extent they have a common reading list, but I feel as if there's a bit of, utilizing uh, Matt as a hostage to gather like collateral damage against while I create a antithesis of Anton, running parasitic lines to him and kind of finding out how um, you know ignoble Anton is when he's pressed to sack up or make very specific his or how to make geometric instead of gooey jocularities rounded off apodetic disclarities in summation, as he imports the words ambiguity as almost a justification. And so I run parasitically along the outline of Anton. He thinks this is, at least according to his comments, kind of an aggressiveness. I'm being aggressive and enigmatic. And anyway, but yeah, I mean, Matt had said, Matt was basically taking where Anton inflated, religion as being like the culprit to that which was in death denial. Matt was saying, well, science is a culprit in perpetrating this mass death denial via transhumanistic ideologies, and yet I this whole notion that there's not a morality that's based, the whole idea of aggrandizing or inflating the human and making certain that our ability of conceptualization and the, the that which makes us existent and above, conceptually above and beyond other animals or other entities of the world, makes it seem to me that why a pointedness, finding historic ideologies that point to agendas which try to elongate life and or mirror, that which is absent, that which is gone already, and to mirror that absence and have a desire to bring back the dead. No, know that which is gone, find that which is precious, And to say the outline of that footing is found in religion here or in transhumanistic science over here, that's just dandy. But, you know, to make a big hoop-de-doo about the fact that people do that, that there's, you know, traditions and communities that attempt to, you know, want to make infinite our lives, bring back the dead, does not necessarily, you know, it's because there's motivations towards those things does not mean that there's a denial of the constituents that make up the object that is trying to be overcome, right? So there's not a death denial, you know, maybe by proxy, but not by necessity. And so the regurgitative insistence that that is what is going on is an oversight, a bounding oversight that I think is choreographed by Anton, first and foremost. Well, what I wanted to talk about in this video as a follow-up to the last one, so, you know, click off if you're not interested now because it'll be a bit of a ramble, has to do with the idea of the vernacular, let's say the binary distinction between that which is natural and that which is synthetic, that which is natural, that which is equipment, that which is natural, that which is manual, right? So in as much as we would want to say here is the existing individual that can think about issues of its own psychology and its own being, that can think about its own absence and becomes existing, and compare that to the extant over here, or the ontic, you know, the view of that extant, that ontic view, this, you know, to use the Heideggerian dialogue is to once again let's refocus on what makes us human, and then let's parse off a dogmatic ideology that suggests that looking forward to life, extending the supposed once occurrence of one's being, right? Which to state it's a once occurrence is a recognition. It's a recognition of the groundedness that we have in rationality and science, and just rationality of our phenomena in general. But so we have nature on one hand, or let's say nature is your humerus, right? And your ulna and radius is a history or a trace. It's like an old typewriter or a dead language. It's evidences of humanity. It's the domestication of animals, so domesticated animals over here, and then the hand, the manual hand, let's say, is the synthesis or the engineering, the equipping of machinery that performs certain functions, right? So if we're going to aggrandize humanity and set it apart because of its ability to conceptualize, then let's make a distinction, a joint, a line, a delineation between that which is natural and that which is synthetic. Now, why, you know, if I ask Dr. Anton, oh, doctor, please, I broke my radius. Can you please fix my arm? And he's like, well, it's all natural. Let's just work up here. Let's just focus on up here because it's all natural, right? Right? It's like To Anton, he wants to take the word natural and conflate it. So we take a bivalence. Let's see. So what we have is we have synthetic, man-made here, and over here we have natural, right? And this is our Venn diagram. And so what we have is we have a bivalent relationship. It's either synthetic or it's natural, right? Now this is one, let's say, definition of nature. Let's call that N1, right? But Anton, and yet you have to ask, what is it about when you're asking him to nut up or become more platonic in his form? And sorry, I'm phrasing things in terms of a hostility, and that's because I'm trying to imbue my humanness and bring my mode and emotion to an argument, to the argument, not to Anton, although I might substitute the two the way he might substitute the two here. But what he tends to do then is he makes a superlative definition of natural, where firstly we take that which is man and we note it, and then we take that which is nature right here, right? We can't, we look at the joint, and the joint between the two might be our bodies, that this might be where we would speak of our sleeping selves that are not awake, but we're quite natural. But to take all of nature and then kind of take all the phenomena in nature, right, out here, and get one of these, synthetic to nature sort of Venn diagrams and conflate nature is the starting point, right, of what he's doing. But he's not just doing that. He's filling in the whole thing, right? He's making all of everything the conflated notion of nature. That's how I see it. Now, why not? And so why would he say, look, it's all nature. Everything that's manual is natural, unless he's obviously not wary about using, a more steeped vocabulary. So why is it that in this particular case he's not willing to say this particular type of nature is a superlative and it's more like being or happening, or it's what's current, right? It's what is, right? And what is what's natural, right? Why is it that if the shoulder, let's say, is physics and orbits, and then this is organics and animals, and this is traces of humanity in animals, or histories, and then this is what's present. Why does he not make a delineation there and maintain that bivalence? And so, what I think is happening is that this is what I like to do. I like to speculate about what his philosophy is just by watching his videos and then contemplating it, and then considering my own thoughts and considering other people's thoughts, and like a transparency or a palimpsest, the apophantic, where I'm not trying to falsify, but I'm trying to align something on top of it choreograph his meaning, to speculate on his meaning. I enjoy doing that, partially because if I can come to some conclusion about what his his work is, right? Like why is it that if he is if everything is a part of humanity and a part of nature, right? If he wants to make a oneness of everything that is, then why make a distinguishing mark and a claim on authorship unless one wants to maintain hierarchical structure, which he does. Why would one want to sign their name to a piece of art where artifice and distinction makes one separate from other individuals? It makes them separate from their world. It makes them independent while living, not while dying, and it maintains that bivalence. There's a certain irony, but the reason I do this is because it shows if Anton is not disclosing the entirety of his thesis, right, then he's maintaining something hidden, such that there would be a desirability to disambiguate his YouTube presence and commodify his work, right, where his maybe the very nature of his work is something anti-capital and anti-commodifying. So there would be an irony if he had a virtue of not commodifying entities, and yet he covered his work up such that people would be, I better buy that book, right? Same way I might put a watermark over a print, so that the actual print takes on a greater value and it's not digitally duplicated. But I digress. So anyway, this exchange, this inflation of the word natural to overlay the world where phenomena are wrapped up and almost synonymous with the world instead of being happenings in the world, right, is kind of curious. And like I said, if he's going to put everything into nature, then he's got to put the antithesis of what he's saying. He's got to put the parasite in there. He's got to put the deconstruction, the instability inside of this. But once again, I'm presuming that there is a certain cardinality and ordinality of like Platonic or rationalizing structures that are different than, let's say, more of the poetic interplay of that which is a phenomena, or that which is ontic, or that which is an ontic ontology, since he likes Heidegger so much. I mean, he likes a lot of authors. But anyway, so to overlay palimpsest over this, I wanted to do what I was talking about in the last video, was the nine dot problem. And the 9-dot problem kind of goes like this, right? And this, instead of saying synthetic and natural, we could talk about cosmologies of science and religion in much the same manner. Instead of a binary, we can talk about them as dichotomies that are spherical in nature, and they intersect, right? And my critique is that there are shared phenomena that individuals have that I call a violation of patently normative that are supernatural that people claim, right? And there's a whole history of those, and that the tangent of those happenings, and by tangent, I mean the occurrence of these happenings, seem as if it's lying outside of the controls of science, and it's also lying outside of the dogmatic realms of religion. It lies somewhere perhaps closer to the religious side, but still outside of that, right? And so that's what I was discussing there. But so I have to question why, with a vast vocabulary, would Anton use simply the word nature and conflate it here, and maintain what, to try to demolish or transcend this version of nature. And I keep thinking that it's a generative grammar, such that nature in this case would be like lowercase a, b, and c. Nature in this case would be like an uppercase a, b, and c. And that what we want, or what's happening here, is that we're generating a grammar that would allow, let's say, a substitutability of case, such that you could say, oh, here's a third type of nature that is uppercase a, lowercase b, uppercase c, right? And that, so we can have like a law or a process, a practice of substitutability here in order to generate a third kind of type of nature here, right? Which might be, like, I don't know, including nature, and including this part of the background, right? For a Venn diagram. The reason I speculate, because I'm on Anton shitless, I guess. The reason I speculate why he's joculating, and the reason I call it a joculation between the between binaries, is that he's joculating between maintaining an outline of the man, right, and making certain that we're definitely going to definitely look at humans as extremely important, and we want to add that outline, and yet we must include them in the entirety of what is and what's happening. But we're going to call that natural, and so it's going to basically say that man is that which is synthetic is a type of that which is natural, right? And so we're going to annihilate the bivalence, and we're going to collapse the two into one, right? But then falsifiability is not possible when you have a truism, or when you've when everything is considered one thing. Anyway, I'm babbling. So why then would we want to generate a new type of grammar that would allow a substitutability of, let's say, uppercase and lowercase? And I thought to myself, what does he have to say if everything is nature, right? And then over here, let's talk about zero. He's very focused in on the zero, right? Now, I don't like this video. if we talk about the zero and we talk about nothing as being real, right? He's got a video called Nothing is Real. Nothing is real, right? It could be a pointing to the zero, right? So we could have in one case the zero as a historic absenting, where at first the development of the number line was just 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then we absented the number system, you know, that would allow the adding of negatives or the subtracting. But there was a pausing process once something was subtracted. The static ability allowed an absence to occur. I'm assuming that is the history of why we would have a place set for zero, right? But the reason I think that we've generated, or he's generating this grammar and joculating between this complete truism and this not a truism, but this particular outlining of man, the maintenance of man within the truism, is because for the same reason that we can talk of empty sets in set theory as being represented by a parentheses that is an empty set in this case, and then in the next case we can substitute the empty set for and represent the empty set as a parentheses that has a zero through it, or just in a third case, or I shouldn't even call it a zero, we can just represent it with the zero with the line through it and say that's the null set, right? And so we have a certain type of indexing and a certain type of matrix that allows a particular type of philosophical description to come into play here, and then when it's challenged, as if it's maintaining a binary, right? The antithesis is not you can make objectionable, or you can lose the objectionability to it because it becomes a truism, and it's supposed to be substitutable in the superlative description of nature is substitutable with happening and with being and with isness and with world, right? But this is kind of like mistaking the phenomena of the world for the fact of the world, right? Kind of the difference between ontology and ontic ontology, the fact of describing ontologies, right? And so if when I hear this collapse into nature, it causes me to think that what's going on next is this substitutability of zeros. And why make this substitutability? Nothing might be considered nothing, right? Nothing is nothing, or nothing is an empty set, right? But in this case, nothing is real might be like, no, we're going to fill the set with this placeholder, the presence of a zero, not the absence of a zero. Sorry, I'm probably getting too far away, but I can't move the camera up, so if you blow that up, you'll see what I'm talking about. So the notion of an absenting is very important, and why is this important to Anton's thesis? I believe it's important to his thesis in making these joculations and generating this grammar in this fashion, is, and it's a matter of hiding one thing and making it opaque so that he can expose or ideate another thing. And so, but what I think he's doing is he's focusing in on the presence of absence, right? And for dreamless sleep, right? Dreamless sleep. Now, the thing about dreamless sleep is when somebody's asleep and they're monitoring the metabolic or the neuro activity of a sleeping person, it's still present, right? And so, and it's even arguable that there is no such thing as dreamless sleep, only a when one's alpha and gamma state or delta states shift, and the serotonin or the dopamine, the reuptake of those in the ecstatic awaking process, right? When one is coming back to their conscious state, that there's a forgetting process, right? But subjectively, the phenomena of feeling like one is waking up temporally in two different areas and questioning and calling that dreamless sleep is an absenting process, right? And we want to say that that absenting process is real in this case. But what is going on then is after this is established, this importance of the zero and the importance of nothing being real, right? Then we talk about absence in terms of a vacuum, in terms of space, and we then talk about fields of space. And so I'm always saying, between every item, like in Zeno's paradox, you can always talk about the middle space between, right, and put in another point, right? But grammatically speaking, all of our letters are are generally separated off from one another. We use cursive to tie the letters together, but we segment off ideas and categories and conceptualizations, um, and we do this definitively, and they're like noun propositions, statements. They're definitions, right? It's the nounus operation as opposed to the verbus operation. Nounus operation opposed to as a predicate opposed to uh, prepositional processes. And so what I think is happening is that the idea of a cosmology, right, speaking about the universe at large, when we speak about the universe, we want to talk about the space between planets and solar systems and entities, right? And then if we can import and say, no, if we can say that the absence is a presence, or we have a symbol to say we can always put a space between everything, right? If we can do that, then we can talk about the cosmos as only ever always present. If we can, meaning we can't, kind of like we can talk about entities falling away and falling out of existence and dying, becoming extinct. Languages or species. We can talk about stars going into supernova, etc. Right, and so in this particular case, where I think you know where I think there's the reasonability as to why Anton wants to focus on the zero, on dreamless sleep, on nothing being real is to run over against and dominate and then claim that this definition, which can cause friction, right? It's his means of collapsing the binary into a oneness, so as to say that the past is a singularity. Now, Anton then claims that could we have not been, right? He asks the question, could we have not been? And he answers, no, because we are, right? Where that would be, that's an ontic ontology, right? He is looking at the fact of our presence, right? That's an ontology. It's a misguided way of looking at natural selection, right? Natural selection, in terms of how, kind of like when we're observing a body asleep and saying, no, they always have activity, they are dreaming, they just forget it, and saying, no, we're going to call that dreamless sleep because the evidence and the testimony of everybody coming out of it is that they skipped temporally, right? By that same accord of saying that nothing is real and that they skipped temporally is the same thing as now I lost my train of thought. It's the same thing as the desirability of saying because we are, we must have been, right? And so that's a way of saying, of looking at the world and saying it must be this way. But this like I said, this is an ontological description of natural selection, and it's an abuse of the science of natural selection, which suggests that entities, molecules, and offspring compete in a changing environment, right? They compete in a changing environment. In my last video, I also accused Anton and Matt of this process of taking the bivalent Venn diagram and moving it into this collapse over against and around in this kind of spiralic form. Like first let's take the environment, and then let's outline the human, and then let's collapse it into the human so that we get this entirety of that which is past. And then let's describe natural selection. Because we are, we must have not meant to be in the theological sense, but this is a point of contention, right? Between watching Anton try to speak about their in a way that we must have had, that the universe must in a way generated a vacuum that must have needed to be filled by a conscious entity that could peer back at the cosmos, which is a type of looking back at oneself, looking back at the phenomena of what Heidegger calls the existent and makes separate from the extant. And this becomes important because it's the very process of being able to organize thoughts and to think. Yeah, we are generated an animal, us, that can think about its own absence in this category, this empty set, right? But we are a fact of the universe in this case, right? So there's a bit of substitutability and joculation then that goes on between this description and this description of the empty set. And so what we have, though, is Anton utilizing I say it's an ontological and misappropriate description of natural selection. He says evolution is true, right? But he then abuses it, right? Because like the dreamless sleeper, right, as opposed to the community observing a sleeper that has brain activity, right, he wants to trump the science with everybody's subjective phenomenological claims that we do have dreamless sleep, right? And so, and that trumping is not dissimilar to kind of saying that there's a teleology or a directedness to natural selection, right? Now, so let's say that we give all of that over to Anton, right? He's not going to say a teleology specifically. He says what he says. You guys go ahead and look at what he says. But my contention, my friction is to say, if we grant over a teleology and we grant over a world of because we are present, that we must have been, and that we cannot imagine ourselves not being, that what then is superlative? What then is another grammar, right, that allows, that incorporates that which is beyond scientific claims, and that which is beyond dogmatic religious claims. I just skipped topics altogether. Yep. Screwed up another video. I had it so clear in my head where I was going with this. Son of a gun. Now my train of thought is entirely off. So let me have a sip of coffee and see if I can get back on it real quick. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Anton hijacks the word nature and then inflates it to include everything. And then he jackknives the word zero, and he points to the absenting process as synonymous with the absenting process of a dream, putting us in the most vegetative state, coming out of this vegetative state. And then he utilizes that to generate a cosmology which justifies our presence, right? But it excludes
the rigors of the science that speak about natural selection. Now, the only reason I would think that he would do that would be, as a communications professor, he's moving through multiple disciplinary areas, and because of that movement through multiple areas and trying to come up with theories, communication theories that correspond to all of these disciplines, he's systematically abusing and or uh, generating uh, indexes and substitutability of these disciplines to coordinate the school of communications, right? So in a way, it's a critique. It's a critique about that. Um, Now, the point that I was getting at, the reason I keep pointing to this outward tangent is because the very geometry, the very linedness, the straight linedness maintains, even the Venn diagrams maintain a Platonic or cardinal, epistemologically rational disciplining, as opposed to what I say is a spiraling, a up over against more, rumination on one's viscera as poetics for descriptions of the cosmos, right? And I'm trying to dance him back into making a distinction between his lingual justifications in order for there to be a more clearly laid out um, uh, where he is in terms of his theism. What is it about the discourse of inherited lexical uh, structures, the fact of the Bible, the fact of religiosity in terms of culture relative to a postmodernist movement and relative to his own work, and Matt as well, and anybody else that's listening or considering these things. To what extent can they break down differences between what it is they're talking about and the rigors of the science that they're using in order to justify their their um, their claims, their theories, right? Um, what is it they're equating? See, and I want it to be more accusatory, but apparently I have a history of accusing, and and this has become considered hostile because I speculate and then I make accusations and I draw delineations where I know I have a friction with what's being said because it doesn't seem to coincide or weave well or jive well with other considerations about things. And so, what I'm suggesting is that if we're going to call everything natural and generate a whole cosmology based on the presence of absenting structures that we experience, right? We experience the absenting of our consciousness, and we use symbols to point back to the absenting, right? And then we call the symbols real through a process of substitution, right? What what does the idea of uh, subtracting out a requirement of natural selection, which is that it is um, a competition of genes replicating within a changing environment. So the stochastic dynamic information theory that is allows for peaks and valleys, allow for presence and absences to occur. How can one generate an antithesis against the philosophy of natural selection while claiming that the theory of natural selection is the case? That's a friction that I have with Anton, and I think he would concur that there's not a teleology, but because he can't, because of his own statements, he cannot imagine his own absence. Right? It's almost to say that humanity must have been, right? And that's kind of a violation. But by violating the science, I say his claim is a statement that's outside of science, and it's more akin to an idealization, which is like a religion, right? But it's found outside. It's found outside now, and it's a tangential point, but it's very important to bring this up, and that's why I brought up the 9 point game. And the reason I bring that up is because that kind of disjuncture between stating because we are and we can't imagine us otherwise and us experiencing an absence, right? That doesn't mean we get to hijack the theory of natural selection and generate a third description of natural selection to fulfill communication theory as the palimpsest or cross-sectioning radial or projected I don't know, the dynamics of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary information. We don't get to abuse that. And so I think that there's a certain abuse there. But the reason I bring it up is because, like paranormal phenomena, the same thing occurs. There is experiences like dreamless sleep that are shared by people, or they're concurrent testimonies of people that lie outside of the controls of science, and they don't appear, they may be aligned with religion, they may be kind of like the cross section here, they may be tangential, like this part right here, they may be tangential to religion, right? But yeah, so what I'm suggesting is this: that there's something that I think garners the unsympathies that like Gary senses and I sense, and I think a lot of other people are sensing, is kind of this: where is the shuffle occurring? What is Anton hiding? What doesn't he know about his statements, or where is the irony, or where is the substitutability of what it is he's saying about science? I keep using the word teleology where he might not use the word teleology, right? But because he says we cannot imagine our own non-existence, right, does not mean that we don't generate imaginations of ourselves as apparitions looking at an environment from the outside, right? And so, in as much as we are able to have imaginations of such things, or choreograph an empathy for the outsidedness of our very being via an imagination, to imagine what the world right, would look like with our absence, because we've empathized or substituted, used, once again, a type of substitution process, right, in order to speak about our absence in much the same way that the identity problem in antinatalism requires this imagination of an outside, a non-existent, a pre-individual in order to grant characteristics via the law of substitution or the contrapositive argument, right? But it's in order to make the argument, the antinatalist has to utilize an imagination process in order to grant constituent attributes and then substitute it in to speak about an individual that doesn't exist, and what it does and doesn't have out of existence, right, as opposed to being nascent, where the nascent being only ever is, it's only ever to be considered once it's in the realm of that which is possible. It's not a product of one's imagining, right? And so here we have the product of one's imagining, but then here we have what are called sensed phenomena that are uncontrollable, and they're being somehow treated the same, right? And so I think that there's something going on between, once again, the empty set, the set with the zero in it, and then just the zero, right? And then in programming, according to Pirro, there is such a thing as a negative zero, which might be equivalent to just saying, you know, the answer to a problem is not zero, or, you know, it's an exclusive, an exclusive parenthetical where we are only to consider that which is of the real, or, you know, of the positive or the negative number line. Good God, I don't know whether or not to post this video or not. It's quite a hell of a ramble. Babble acquisition, misrepresentation against the commodifying, of someone else's product. See, I'm actually doing Anton a favor by doing this. Probably not. And I'm certainly not doing myself any favors. Yeah, and I thought, why be frictional or hostile? I mean, that functioned as a stylistic, but that would only be me maintaining this binary as opposed to using the ego deflationary process of, you know, love thy enemy, and, you know, you are, you know, of the world, you know, you're in the world but not of the world, and love thy neighbor, and stop the friction ability between me and other individuals, so that I can come to the table and point specifically at distinctive differences, and in the process of making these distinctive differences can generate a dialogue about how the cards are shuffled, what's being hidden, what's face down, what's face up, and ask people to make disclosures about themselves. I think, once again, Anton, you know, can make claims and objectify religious, you know, make questions and put forward ideas, but to make claims about his own thoughts and considerations, as crazy as they might be, is in a way me questing to find out more about the guy, to befriend him, and yet to do so as an enemy, right? To ask as an enemy for him to point to his vulnerability and disclose it publicly, where his religiosity is, in fact, or where phenomena that he believes are, right? Between that which is sensed but not controlled, and that which is imaginary but so viscerally held that it's got a sentiment or a certain endearment to it that would not necessarily be best to put on the plate as a magistra, as um, the mottled wizards, the one who takes the authority because one's been granted it through their process of going through the canonized structure of the university. Thank you for listening.